Okay, welcome to our February business meeting for the Franklin County School Board. At this time, I'm going to ask you to stand for a moment of silence. I'm going to ask Mr. Williams to lead us in the pledge.
Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do welcome you to our meeting. Obviously, we have a bigger forum than normal. One of the things that we're going to insist upon, that's as loud as I can talk. One of the things that we're going to insist upon tonight is we are going to be orderly, and we're going to be civil, and we're going to conduct ourselves like the adults that we should be. At this time, I am going to ask you if you have a cell phone, turn that off, put it on silence mode, so we can not have disruptions. We do have all members present. At this time, we're going to move to item B of our agenda, which is requests to speak before the board. And I will just remind everybody that this is a school board meeting in the public. It is not a public school board meeting. There are 4 individuals that did go through the proper procedures to speak before the board. We have a policy on that. They each have 5 minutes to speak. And at this time, I'll turn that over to Dr. Lomas to recognize those individuals.
Okay, the first individual that we had a request from is Mr. Chris Ball.
Good evening, Mr. Director, Board. A lot of people are here tonight expecting me to say a lot of things. Some of you are here to get the aha moment. Some of you are expecting me to espouse a point of view that I support and that you think you do. Some of you are here to hear a point of view that I may not support. First thing I want to do is to I need to beg my God and this board and the faculty of this school and the children of this school and the parents and the people of this community, I need to beg your forgiveness. Because up until this moment, up until this past few weeks, even though I've had children in the program here, I haven't necessarily given the safety of our students an extra thought. And that's terrible. We have a club here that was started because a few students feel unsafe. You know, I can tell you my personal view. I don't think clubs outside of school that promote a particular a way of viewpoint or a way of life should be here. And this is one of them, and I'm going to maybe shock a lot of people who are Christians. I don't think any Christian club should be here. Because my job as a parent is to teach my children a viewpoint that I believe in. Because I have a personal relationship with my God and my children. That's my job. And I think we're getting out of that. But I want to turn away from the fact that this club is here. I think we're missing a lot of the point of why we have this club to start with. And this is where we, in my opinion, have all dropped the ball. We don't have a very safe situation at our school. When we have children who are being bullied simply because of perhaps the way they dress or their sexual preference or whether they're overweight or skinny or pick a category, then we have given up on our children. I think that's our big problem. If we had the safety at the school that these two young men needed, then we wouldn't have the need for this club, because the club itself says that they're here for a safe harbor for our students to be ourselves. Is this making a safe harbor? And for everybody that's here who is preaching hate, I urge you to stop. Our children are in the middle of this battlefield, and it's ridiculous, and it's got to stop. It's got to stop from people who are supposed to be Christians, and it's got to stop from people who do not like us simply because we are Christians, and it's got to stop from everybody in between. This is a school. This is not a place to pursue agendas. This is a place where children should be coming in safety and learning how to move on to their adult lives. This is a place to learn reading and writing and arithmetic, if you want to get down to it. It's not a place for people to promote agendas. And I don't care what agenda it is. If nothing else comes from this, I urge that we need to actually implement the zero tolerance policy that we have for bullies. If we had done this from the start, we wouldn't have this great turnout. Imagine if all of us had actually cared about our children before this week. Mr. President, Mr. Director, I appreciate your time. I hope I've said something that may affect some people. I urge everyone here to calm down. We talk about hate a lot. And it's here, it's real, but we cannot legislate people's feelings.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The next request that we received was from Mr. Robert Weidlich.
Hello, everyone. I'm a parent of 4 children in the Franklin County school system, 2 that attend the high school. And like many parents in this community, I'm very disappointed by the foundation of this club at our high school. There's really no place for discussions of sexual orientation in a high school, in a public high school. And this has been put in the media as, there's been a lot of falsehoods put in the media, and I'd like to just go down a few of them real quick. One of the things that's been said is that if we don't allow this club at our school, we'd have to give up federal funding. That's not correct. The Equal Access Act says that they cannot remove public funding from the school for not complying with the Equal Access Act. Another few things that
this is an interview by Dr. Lonis, where, by the Tullahoma News, I believe. She said the court system has already made a ruling on the legality of such a drug. That's not true. The Supreme Court's only made a ruling on the Equal Access Act one time since its inception, and that was 1990. And it was a religious speech case. It was Mergens, if you want to look it up. In '68, there was a case called Tinker, where they were trying to decide the free speech rights of children in school. And that's where a lot of this GLSEN stuff comes from, is they believe that children have uninhibited rights to free speech in the public school system. That's simply not true. Since then, there have been 3 cases where, in courts where they've challenged the authority of schools to limit speech. On all 3 occasions, the school won. They were allowed to limit such speech. There's some other cases also that I'd like to talk about. One of them being Christian Legal Science Society, versus Martinez, where the plurality of justices conceded that school boards must be permitted to establish and apply their curriculum in such a way as to transmit community values, and that there is a legitimate and substantial community interest in promoting respect for authority, traditional values, be they social, moral, or political. This is not settled in any way, shape, or form. It's going to have to be settled one day, because I'm not going to stand for my kids being subjected to homosexuality in a public school. That's no place for it. You have in the school policies an anti-bullying section in there that says kids will be disciplined for bullying. You need to follow that and, do that. Discipline for bullying. We don't need this club. I had a lot of other things to say, but without a podium, I can't really go over it. So I'm going to just say, I'm just going to read a paragraph, and then I'll be done. People who want to start a gay club in their high school say it will be all about coming together because of a common interest to talk about diversity and political issues. But the teachers and administrators and parents need to know that GSA is a youth recruitment strategy carefully laid out by gay activist groups who carefully avoid addressing the health issues involved. Parents, teachers, and students need to know about the dangers. There is no excuse for ignorance. The mainstream media won't report it, but the internet is packed with truth about the radical gay political agenda and lifestyle. In order to get what they want, they are targeting kids. If you ever heard of Kevin Jennings, he's the founder of the GLSEN. In 2006, they had a conference up in Massachusetts where they bust in middle school and high school kids that were members of the GSA, and they were subjected to stuff like fisting, rimming, oral sex, anal sex. The GLSEN does not belong in our school.
The next individual that requested to speak is Kevin Hambrick.
You may begin the time, but before I start, let me say sorry to any Christian against the GSA here tonight for all the misconduct that you will receive. And I'm sorry. sorry to every pro-GSA member for the misconduct you have received tonight. I'm a ninth grader here, freshman. I know why I'm here. Press knows why I'm here. You know why I'm here. I'm not going to even try and defend my constitutional rights because you know them. And for those of you saying this is a gay club, it's not. I'm a heterosexual. It's called a Gay-Straight Alliance. Go figure. And there are also people saying the club is sexually based. No. The reason we have this club, mainly, is to end the demeaning of the LGBT community, especially down here in the South and Franklin County, where dehumanization is very high. We are being antagonized and we are being slandered. We see why this club is needed. We've gained much support, yet much anti-support. I'm sure our support outweighs the hatred, though. We need this club because some people have chosen to prove to us why in the dehumanization of us. There are some people that would like a fishing club in here instead of a GSA, and trust me, you could do that. Get a teacher sponsor, try and try again, because that is what the GSA did, and that's what you can do. We have community support, faculty support, and student support of almost 50. I could name a short list of anti-GSA people, and I have one planned out. That's against the policies for this speech, I understand. And my point is that this community needs this group, and not just the school. And you can't tear the club down legally, to my belief, I could be incorrect, unless you exit all non-curricular clubs. And I also stand against that, because every club that we have in this school, we have for a reason. Hunger Happens Here helps people in need of food. Yearbook creates the yearbook, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it provides a financial standpoint for the school. And for anyone I'm against you, but I respect you. You can tear us down. You can tear our signs down. You can tear the tears out of our eyes, out of fear that we will be hurt. But so far, we have the legal right to keep meeting. And I'm speaking mainly because some people don't realize this. As you might know, I fought to even be able to speak at this meeting, and that fight will not be in vain. It's not only my fight, but a fight of roughly 2/3 in here, I would say. Not only do I ask that you keep this club, but I do ask that you also listen to the two previous speakers and the next one, because I'm sure they had good things to say. Good luck to them, and I hope we all have a good night. And I'm finished.
Request that we received was from Peter Trinity.
Dr. Lomas, school board, I thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm Peter Trinke. I live in Sewanee, and I have a history of working with youth groups. I have a history of working with children who lead challenged lives, many of whom suffer from bullying, and I'm always proud to see them have the strength and support to overcome that. About 20 years ago in Arkansas, I worked with a suicide prevention task force. What we learned was that kids seek and need peer contact and counseling. And the support groups should be established in the schools because that's where kids are. Both the troubled kids and the peers who can support them. And school may also be their only safe place. School is more now than the 3 R's. And schools are a microcosm of the society where we live. This is where children learn appropriate interaction. And this happens more during clubs and other non-classroom times. This is why clubs and social gatherings are essential, so that we can learn these social skills, so that we can learn how to get along. Now, some of the principals in this club are part of our church youth group, where over the years they have learned active caring and active serving. And at this church, I also teach Sunday school. And in Sunday school, I try to match the Bible reading of that week to our daily life. Well, yesterday, the reading was the Transfiguration. God spoke very briefly. He said, "This is my son. Listen to him." Exclamation point. Now, when God's talking and there's an exclamation point, that's probably what we ought to do. Listen to him. Listen to him when he says, love your neighbor. Listen to him when he says, love yourself. Listen to him when he says, do not harm children. And of course, last week, the gospel reading, Jesus had come back to the small town where he grew up, Nazareth. And they were feeling proud of him until they realized he was not being the way they expected. Then they got enraged to the point where they wanted to kill him, as he gave out Old Testament examples of God working through the prophets, helping peoples that they openly hated, people who were different. Love overcomes fear. That's years of Sunday school in 3 words. Love your neighbor. 3 more words. Please retain for these children their God-given right, their legal right to just be. Just be themselves, to just be safe. Thank you. Amen.
Okay, let's go on to this item C, which is the approval of the agenda.
Second.
We've got a motion to approve the agenda in a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item D, approval of consent agenda. It's basically our January minutes.
Move to accept the minutes. Second.
Have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. That will bring us to item E, the director's report.
Evening. I do have one addition to the agenda. I received a request today from Mr. Isbell. He is taking 10 students to Tennessee Tech for Festival of Winds this weekend. Planned to leave after school on Thursday, so we already approved the field trip. However, due to some things that they need to get there a little bit early for, they need to be released from school at 2 o'clock on Thursday. So I tentatively approved that, but the board ultimately has to approve it because it's during the school day.
Motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion to approve that last minute trip and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries.
Next is our personnel report.
I don't think so. I don't think there's anything surprising.
Hardly hear you.
This is not a if you can hear, you're gonna have to listen up. The PA system's not working great. You holler and we can't hear you is not gonna help.
I don't have anything to add to what you can see on the screen, just the routine personnel happenings that have occurred since our last board meeting.
The next item is our maintenance update. I will commend the maintenance department. This past month, we were able to get the fencing completed at Broadview. If you've been out there, it's very nice. And we also completed some fencing that was required at Rock Creek. So 2 big projects that were kind of on the table for a little bit, and we were able to get those knocked out this past month. Is there anything else?
We hope to have a fence put up behind the special ed office, kind of running back towards that next street, whose name I can't call right now. That will be our last fencing project of the year, I hope.
The next item are our financial reports. I talked to Ms. Latham today if there was any items of interest that we need to point out. We're tracking pretty well on budget right now. Revenues are coming in a little bit higher than projected, which is always a positive. But we've spent through the second quarter, we're at 47%, which is about where we need to be, midway point. So I feel very comfortable with that. I will be coming to the board in March with some budget amendments because we will have a good idea at that point of our allocations and any overages that we may have in those line items that we want to consolidate and put toward other things. So you can expect that in March. But right now, everything is tracking unless you have questions about budget concerns. Okay. All right. And just a few things. I did have on here legislative update. I was going to share with you some of the things that happened last week at our TOS legislative conference. And we were very fortunate. The governor came in and spoke with us, Governor Haslam. And if you heard his State of the State address on Monday night, there was a recognition of some additional funding for education this year, which we're really excited about. Basically, they're putting $100 million for teacher salaries next year as additional funding. There will also be $30 million that will provide the 12th month of insurance. That's been kind of something we for several years have asked for, and so they're finally going to put money into the budget to cover that 12th month of insurance for teachers and employees. They're doubling their funding allocation for technology. So we're going from $15 million to $30 million, and that will be a recurring fund each year. So it's not just a one-time push that they're doing for technology. So that's a good thing for us as well. They project $48 million to fund enrollment growth and inflation, and they are removing the negative funding implications for early graduates. You know, when they start looking at our student populations, and if they graduate in December, they're not counting toward those numbers for VEP funding in the spring. So they're going to alter that, and so it won't be detrimental if we have students that graduate early. So that was kind of a positive as well. Then after Governor Haslam spoke, Commissioner McQueen, the Commissioner of Education, spoke, and there was a concern about 10-ready testing, whether or not it was going to be ready for us to start. Our test window started today, and they basically at that meeting said that if you wanted to switch to paper pencil, that they were going to allow that. I came back and spoke with our principals and kind of gave them the ins and outs, the positives, the negatives of doing either sticking with online testing or moving to paper pencil, and the principals all agreed that we would stay the course for online testing. So that was our intent. We had 4 schools that started testing today. The state experienced a failure this morning in the system. And so at 4:30 this afternoon, Commissioner McQueen held a conference call. And basically the state right now is planning to switch back to paper pencil because of this. It's disappointing because our students and our teachers have worked extremely hard preparing for this online testing. So there is a concern there, and more to follow. They're planning to put out more guidance on Thursday, but just wanted to give you a heads up, and I'll be informing the teachers tomorrow and talking with the principals, because there's a lot of questions, obviously, with switching midstream like we're doing right now. So we'll try to answer as many of those questions as possible in the next couple of days. But just wanted to get that word out to you all so that you're aware of that in case you hear something.
So switching midstream though, that we don't have the option any longer to do online testing?
As of the conference call this afternoon, it was not an option to choose. Basically, they were mandating that the entire state was going to switch to paper pencil. So my concern is, we have third graders that are going to be taking a standardized test using a bubble sheet, and they've not practiced even how to do a bubble sheet. They've been doing all of their practice online. So there's definitely some concerns about that at this point, but we'll work through it and hopefully get more information from the state this week. But
Does that hurt, let me ask you one other question, does that hurt us, when we started testing today,
we did.
is that going to, what's the bubble test going to do when the testing window now? Do we start at a later date now?
We do. The paper pencil, the start date is supposed to be February the 22nd, but Commissioner McQueen indicated in the conference call today that's not a set in stone because they've got to get these tests copied. They have not been copied, so they've got to make copies of them, and they've got to ship those out to the individual school systems after sorting them and putting those together. So it's going to be difficult to hit that February 22nd window, so it may push the testing dates later. So a lot to still be determined on that. But I wanted you all to be aware of that change. Also, on Friday, I sent out a phone message, and I'm assuming most of you got that, but wanted to recognize our submission for the Tennessee Teacher of the Year finalist. Very excited about this. We have 3 teachers in 3 different categories. Terry Hanaway of Rock Creek is representing our pre-K through 4. Tracy Merritt at North Lake will be our representation 5 through 8. And then Todd Payne at Franklin County High School will represent our 9 through 12. So I'm really excited about those teachers. Their names will be submitted to the region, and they will compete regionally. If they're selected regionally, then they'll go to the state. But very solid representation for us. I'm excited about that. And then just a couple of reminders that I have. The Capitol Building Program Committee will meet this Thursday, the 11th at 6 p.m. At South Middle School. So if you all want to join us, feel free to do that. And also the school committee, the County Commission School Committee meets later this month, February the 22nd at 6:30 p.m. So just a reminder on those. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Dr. Long? If not, we'll move to item F, new business. Number 1 is annual review of Section 2 policies, physical management.
We have those reviewed primarily with the finance department, and there were no recommendations for changes on that. So I would recommend that you approve no changes.
So moved.
Second.
A motion to reapprove all Section 2 policies, and a second discussion about those. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 2 is annual review, Section 5 policies, personnel.
In this section, we did have several that were minor changes. Most of it is just trying to edit some language to get it up to date and consistent within our policies. The first one is 5.102, classifications and qualifications. Just trying to get to the terminology or standardizing the terminology to be using certified for our professional staff and classified for our support staff is the primary change there. And I'll just go through these with the rationale unless you have questions, just feel free to ask that. The next one is 5.106. This is application and employment. Again, it's just standardizing that language in there. Instead of food service, we're using school nutrition as the terminology. And on the second page of that policy, we're taking out some wording toward the bottom, lines 25 and 26, primarily because we do not do a probationary period.
Dr. Lomas, I'm not clear on the meaning of 10 and 11. Are we accepting or are we including? It almost seems like it's not connected.
10 and the lines
lines
10
10 and 11.
Do you want to speak to that? Yes. Well, we don't pay for the investigations for the non-certified and the nutrition.
The only two groups that we do not pay for the fingerprinting are the non-certified substitutes and the student nutrition substitutes. If someone comes to our office and wants to apply for a job to work in food service, they have to start as a substitute, and they have to pay for their own fingerprinting at this point. And that's not a change in practice. We've been doing that for 2 or 3 years. The change that's recommended there is merely to change the wording from food service to student nutrition. Is it not read right?
I know it just seems a little awkward.
I'm sorry.
It just seems a little awkward, I think.
I'll work on it. Be glad to.
The next one, there are substantive changes to our new teacher orientation. The new teacher orientation requirement of a minimum of 30 hours was established before we started our professional learning communities, or CPLCs, on Wednesdays that meet weekly. So in reviewing this with the central office staff, we kind of determined that this might be excessive, and we would prefer that they spend their time at the school doing their professional development at the school level versus coming to central office for training. So we've changed this around. There still will do the 2 days at the beginning of the school year. That's mainly orientation, human resource types, personnel issues that we need to give them information on. But beyond that, we feel like that the professional development should occur at the school level. So we've taken that requirement out. So next year, the 30 hours will not be the requirement. They will just participate in their PLCs. The next policy, 5.108, is again just changing the language. The state no longer calls it apprentice teachers. It's a practitioner license, so that's just updating to state language. The next policy, 5.109, evaluation, again, is just getting the terminology classified and certified in our policies for standardization. Policy 5.110 on compensation, again, is just trying to clarify some of the language. Some of our full-time certified support staff are paid every 2 weeks instead of monthly, so that's why we put that in there, so that it accurately reflects what we're doing. The language just said monthly, fixed salary per month, and we added applicable pay period onto that, because some of them are paid every 2 weeks instead of monthly, so that's why we added that language. So we're not changing anybody's pay schedule, we're just checking or fixing the policy to where it reflects that we do both practices.
Consistent with the other changes that you've made with respect to clarifying certified and classified employees.
Okay?
Should line 3 there say all full-time certified / classified?
Now, your classified are different. All of our classified are our teachers, and they are paid monthly.
Okay.
It's just the...
Oh, I see.
yes.
Yes. Never mind.
Okay, is that good? All right. The next one is 5.701, which is substitute teachers. There's some changes on line 21. And we took out the word they're approved. And there is some changes on the second page that are a little more substantial, but again, it's just kind of clarifying our processes in processing with our new substitutes.
Why do we mark out approved?
It's in the class.
It's in, see that sentence, it says approved twice. Mhm. next policy, substitute workers, 5.703. I'd like to change the way we're doing our substitutes for our support employees or our classified employees. Currently or previously, we were not necessarily getting a substitute for some of those, like our teacher assistants. If they were out for the day, we weren't getting a sub for them. Unfortunately, with the RTI process, response to intervention, a lot of our support staff are being utilized in that process of teaching RTI. And with being able to implement RTI with validity, it has to be on a consistent basis. So if you have a teacher assistant or some other type of position that is helping with that process that is not there that day, those students basically do not get the opportunity to have the RTI. So it's important for us, and it's more of a case-by-case basis, but it's important for us to be able to provide subs for those positions so that that continuity can occur, because they are taking on more of an active role in the instructional process. So that's why we're changing that to reflect that we can do subs for those positions when deemed necessary. And those are all of the ones that we recommended changes in section 5, and the others, we didn't see any issue with the wording on the policies.
Okay, with the exception of 5.106 that Ms. Walker.
I'm okay with the issue. I mean, I just think it's just a little off. I'm okay with the meaning of it. You know, I don't have.
Well, I mean, I don't have any issue pulling that out, approving the others as a whole and bringing back that wording.
That's fine. That's fine.
So if that's acceptable, we'll hold out 5.106 in this group, bring it back next month with new wording. And if not, we'll entertain a motion for the approval of the rest of it.
I move to approve the remainder.
Second. We have a motion to approve the remaining policies with the changes and a second. Any discussion about those? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. That brings us to item 3, which is policy 6.702. And this is obviously why everybody's here tonight. We typically don't have this many people at our board meeting. But one of the things that came up that prompted us to take a look at our policies are when questions are asked to this board. Our board policy basically says that the principal, in cooperation with the faculty and student body, shall approve all clubs and organizations within the school. Well, the school board is really not involved in that process. So we want to understand what is involved in that process. And when we ask questions, when I ask questions about new clubs that are being formed, I want to make sure that we're consistent in all of our schools and what we're doing. And I think that's what prompted putting this on here, is so everybody on the board understands what does constitute a club. What are the criteria for a club? Do they have memberships? Membership minimums? And that's what we, I guess, want to discuss tonight and see what we've come up with based on that request.
When this was brought to my attention, I asked our secondary supervisor, Diana Spalding, to meet with our 2 high school principals and let's standardize these processes and procedures. Because to be honest, we didn't have these formalized as we should have, or as consistent, but it was in adherence with board policy, what we were doing. The policy is not very specific on the process and procedures for standing up clubs. It gives very general guidance. And so based on that guidance, we wanted to be sure that the principals were being consistent in the way that they were implementing the policy. So I asked them to put together their criteria and also an application of what, if they're approached about developing a club, how does that process work? I do apologize for getting this on the agenda late, but I was in Nashville last week and did not get those procedures and administrative application back from them working on that till Thursday, and so we added it at that point just because we wanted to demonstrate to you all or provide that information to you all so that you would be consistent and you would know exactly how we're implementing that procedure. There may be room for changes here or improvements to it, and I certainly welcome that. But currently what we are doing, there is a list and I sent that out. It's 6.702.1. It's an administrative procedure, and it is the criteria that we use to establish those. And that criteria is based primarily on the board policy, and it actually goes a little beyond the policy. We at least do what's in the policy, but then the principals have added some things to it that they think are relevant as well. If it doesn't go far enough, you can give us that guidance as well. We also have an application that we have standardized, and this is information that the principals were gathering. We just didn't have a form for them to put it on. So now we actually have the administrative form, which is 6.702.2. And again, that's mainly developed from the guidance that is in the board policy as to what needs to be kept on record at the principal's office. And so that's the two documents that you see there.
Can you give us an example? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but in part of this, it says open membership to interested students. Any restricted membership requires approval from the director of schools. Can you give us an example of what that might be included in that?
If you look, I guess, in the board policy, it talks about like if it's a sorority or something like that that would limit it, membership based on a criteria. We want the clubs to be open to all students, and so if they're going to limit membership for a particular reason, it would have to be approved.
Would that also apply to an academic honor society with a grade point average requirement?
Like a National Honor Society?
Yes, like that standard.
That's already been established? Yes.
Is there somewhere, I might have just missed it, I don't know, in this where it denotes whether we have an open forum, a limited or a closed forum type club thing? Do you think that's important, maybe that be in there?
It does not. It does not state that specifically in the board policy.
I would just kind of throw that out. I mean, what we've heard up to this point, I think it's clear to make everybody, or make sure everybody understands, you know, you have like 3 different options of your process or how you go about creating a club. And what I heard, or what I understand, is you can either have an open forum, a limited, or a closed forum. I think it's probably, I would think that you would need to have that in there somewhere.
I guess one of the other things that I think we ought to take a look at when we're going through these and asking those questions. For instance, it says no solicitation for membership, can publicize the club and who to contact if interested in membership. What is that limited to? Are there only designated areas to publicize that? Is that, can we define that further? Or is there a...
We can. There is a designated area. I think that's in one of the other, let me see, I've seen it in the meeting times only may be posted within the school in areas designated by the principal. So my understanding is that they're establishing bulletin boards and that sort of thing where students can post things to that advertise the club and the meeting times and that sort of thing.
But those would be restricted areas.
Correct.
Not everywhere.
Correct,
Only
yes.
in-
And the primary reason for that, in talking with the principals, when you post things on the wall and you use hot glue or tape, we're pulling the paint off when we pull those signs down. So it's more for, you know, the maintenance of the buildings that they're trying to designate those areas.
I agree with Kevin, though, that the no solicitation for membership in the publication, or the publicizing of the club to contact if interested in membership. I think I understand the intent, but the wording seems somewhat in conflict and contradictory, and I think it would be, I think that bullet point would benefit from some clarity.
Okay.
And while I'm on the issue of clarity, I want to move down to the next one, which you and I have already spoken about, which is no conflict of interest with other clubs already established. The meaning of no conflict of interest, or specifically the meaning of conflict of interest, I don't think that use is appropriate there. And I don't really think, based on our discussion, that was the intent of the drafters. The way I would read no conflict of interest would be if there was already a Young Democrats party within the school, which many schools have, and the Young Republicans wanted to start a Young Republican club, one could make an argument that the Young Republicans had a conflict of interest with the Young Democrats, therefore the Young Republicans could not have their club. So I think what you're really trying to get at there is that that scheduling and use of facilities should not conflict with other clubs that are already using those resources and facilities. For example, if the chess club is meeting in the library on Monday at 3:15, the German club can't make a request that they want to meet in the library on Monday at 3:15. They have to find another time. So I think it would be appropriate that something that requests for space and school resources should not compete with clubs already established. If a conflict exists, suggest that the sponsors meet to try to resolve that conflict.
I think a couple other things that we need to consider putting into these policies as well are define after school meeting. Can you start meeting at 3:01, or do we need time to clean out or clear out? And then we have a minimum time, if you will,
Okay.
to start. And the same thing before school. When does that meeting officially need to end so we can get kids to classes?
Okay.
The other thing that I would add is, I don't see anything in here about a minimum number of participating students. For instance, 2 kids and a student or a teacher sponsor, does that equate to a club? I think we have to define
Okay.
what that is.
The other one I would maybe mention is how they set time and whatever that is, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, probably about 5 years. But I think that if we're adjusting or cleaning this up a little bit, that probably, some minimum of a review by administration to make sure that whatever organization you're discussing is meeting the requirements laid out in the policy. Things like we talked about, like the chairman just said, minimum number, attendance, to make sure that's going on, to make sure it's a goals and objectives, mission statement, to make sure you have a viable thing going on and not just having a student organization just to say you have one, but to make sure that whatever that is, goals, objective-wise, or being met, or it's achieving the purpose of the goals and the mission statement, and not just a sign on the wall.
I guess, and I don't know if this is the right place to put this in as well, but obviously if you don't have a teacher sponsor, a club would be disbanded. Is there any other, those are the questions that I think that arose. One, how do you form a club and what constitutes a club and what's the criteria? But also, I think after reviewing our list of clubs, there was even clubs that we were on our website that were no longer in existence. Well, how did those things come about? How does a club no longer exist? Is it strictly because of it fails to get a teacher sponsor? Is it lack of participation?
So you're saying there should be guidelines on abolishing clubs if they
Yeah, I think it's probably based on the criteria that you
meet the criteria?
Yeah, that you set out, that you established.
Are you wanting to put that into policy or procedures? I just want to be clear if this is something that needs to go
I think
into
that's
policy.
probably a procedure, but I still think we want to
Okay.
understand what that is.
But then also, don't you think maybe the time, I'm looking at this to make sure it doesn't already exist, but the time that, is it 2 hours, is it a maximum, or can it go for 4 hours? If there's another club wanting to meet, say, in that same room, I mean, is there a limit on the time that the club can use? And I don't know that it actually goes here, but I just wanted to bring that up just to know.
Well, I mean, I think even athletic things, we put restrictions on. No,
I would ask that if we're gonna be having requirements like this that could result in abolishment of a club or mothballing a club or something like that, for another term, would be that if a club, for example, is not meeting one of these requirements, that they be provided with notice that you're not meeting this requirement, and that they have an opportunity to correct the way in which they're not complying with it. For example, if the teacher sponsor leaves or retires or is ill for an extended period of time, that there is a reasonable amount of time for that organization to identify, obtain a different teacher to be the sponsor.
Or if the membership drops to 2 or 3.
Yes. That they be advised that you have dropped below whatever threshold has been set.
And that may not be any different than what we're doing in some, like for instance, Beta Club or National Honor. I think if you don't attend those meetings, you may lose those privileges, but I think they probably get notified. But I guess what we're after is we want it uniform, but not everybody should. The other one that I'll throw out, and I don't know if this is standard practice or procedure or even something that we need to look at, but do we generate minutes from these meetings? And I'm not saying minutes to send to the board for their approval or even to the principal, but do we generate minutes from these clubs that can be gone back and looked at if necessary? You know, if you have a situation where, hey, were you talking about this or whatever, you've got minutes that tell what what consisted in your meetings.
I don't think that's practical for a lot of these clubs. I mean, for a service club or something like that, if they're engaged in a service project, it's not really a meeting like we're having now. I mean, if you had, we're going to requirement that you maintain minutes when you're electing officers of the club. That's one thing. But a lot of these clubs are not ones that you would be having a formal meeting, and I don't think we should impose that requirement on those clubs that's just not what they do. I understand where you're trying to get with it, but I don't think it's not a one-size-fits-all for all clubs.
I agree it's not a one-size-fits-all, but I'm not sure you can adopt and at least be moving that if you're going to can drive, I mean, your minutes can be your can drive. So let's see if they can do it.
Well, when you think about it, there really ought to be some kind of record. No matter what I mean, if it's something as simple or as worthwhile as working on a float for homecoming, you can just write that down. It does not, I don't think it's got to be all inclusive as to what you talk about, but if something is discussed or there's a meeting or whatever, the case may be, in our public school system, I think there'll be a record of it.
Well, I don't know, I guess where I'm going with this is if we do want to look at an attendance requirement, those are easy things to, I guess, incorporate into it. And I'm not saying I want to know everything we're talking about. I just think that we took roll, this was the whatever laying out we need.
I would ask the school board's attorney to comment on this, but I would have a real problem if the school was asking the Fellowship of Christian Athletes or P7 to take minutes about what they prayed about, or if they even prayed. I think that you are, and if you wanted to apply that law or that requirement consistently across all groups, I think we would have a legal problem. I would defer to Mr. Cagle's opinion in that, but something of that nature where there was a record of everything that, or the nature of what was said at a meeting, such as a prayer group or a Bible study, I don't think would be appropriate, and I think it would be, it would create problems.
Were you able to hear the comment and concern?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I'm Chuck Cagle. I'm the counsel to the Board of Education of Franklin County. It gets back to what minutes really are. Minutes are not verbatim transcripts of any group. The minutes are essentially a record of who's there, who's absent, the types of things that were considered at the meeting. And let's use the example that was given. For example, with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, if I were to be the secretary or if I were to be the sponsor of that club, my recommendation would be that you just have a notation that the club met that day, that there was a quorum of the members present or not, who was present, who was absent, the 3 or 4 major categories that were covered, not in detail. You know, that there was an agenda that was approved, the 3 or 4 major categories of things that were covered. Again, not in detail. You don't have to say those things with any specificity for what happened, and that the meeting adjourned at a certain time. And that's it. And that's what I would recommend for all clubs. I don't think that there's any, possibly the only exception I make to that is if you're raising money, and those funds are always subject to audit, that a detailed treasurer's report or a financial statement report be given by a club. But other than that, it's just items of general business, and that's all we require. I don't think we need to get into the nitty-gritty about what was discussed at that club meeting that day. After all, there's a sponsor there, and the sponsor is required to keep the club meeting consistent with the policies of the Board of Education and the school.
I think that's what we were after, just kind of how to broadly brush that, just so there's some record of it. At least from my part, I wasn't asking to delve down into the intricacies of the meeting, just have some kind of record that it took place. That may even turn around to be helpful if somebody challenges the validity of the club.
Yeah. But if you follow the strict rules, Robert's Rules of Order, you look at the minutes section of that. Minutes are just basically what occurred, what transpired, and things like that. It's not a verbatim transcript of the meeting itself.
Thank you. Anybody else have things from a board perspective? Is there things that we would like to see looked at further into these policies? I mean, I know we've gone out quite a few, and I'm assuming you've took all those notes and anybody else have a thought on those? And again, from my perspective, and I'm not speaking on for anybody else on board, but when I'm saying meeting times, I'm not saying, hey, you got started at a certain time. I'm just saying, just have general parameters of, you know, I don't know all the ins and outs of daily life of a teacher in the schools. You know, are they really available at 3:01, or does it take 3:15 to 3:20 to? I don't know. Does it need to be 3:30, and do we have to accommodate those two? And I'm not saying they all have to start at the same time. I'm not saying they all have to end at the same time. But generally speaking, we ought to have a parameter of saying, let's at least wait till this time. This looks like a good time to start, or
wonder, at this point, do we have designated days for club meetings? Do we have any type of schedule set forth for that? Or is it just they meet when they want to, or how does it work?
Again, those decisions are made at the school level, so every school is a little bit different, based on their availability of facilities and how often the club meets. So there's not a hard and fast rule on that. But I can, if there's, Mr. Manager's here, he may be able to speak more to what Franklin County High School does, but it is just at the school level, the decision on that.
Is there a way though that we can come back, from them and say, generally speaking, clubs meet on these days?
Sure.
There are always exceptions. But
Right.
I think that's
That's
what
what I meant.
Okay,
we're
no, we can provide that. I sent you a list of the two, from both of the high schools of all of the current clubs with the descriptions of those, so I can just add to that when their meeting times are and get that information back to you.
I mean, those are the things I think we'd like to see. And I guess next month, is next month an ample time to look at those things?
Oh, yes, we
Can
can
we
get it
bring
to you.
those back next month and review what we're,
Sure.
anything else there? Okay, then we'll move to item G. For your information.
I kind of got off track when I was talking about the 10 rating and didn't go on to say what the legislation is doing at this point, and I'll share a little bit of what the discussion was. Obviously, vouchers was a big discussion point. We spent quite a bit of time talking about that at 5 o'clock this evening, so the vote should be in by now, hopefully. The House of Representatives was supposed to be voting on that, so we'll know more once that's done. But other than that, there's a new bill that's going through concerning testing, and they are going to, if it passes, abolish the 8th grade and the 10th grade ACT test, and it will also stipulate an additional test for 11th graders if they want to do a retake, which I think is a great idea. I know my first ACT score was not all that great, so to get the second time I did much better. So I'm excited that they'll get the opportunity to do that, and will be the expense will be picked up by the state for that. That was really the only two legislative items that we talked about. The resolutions here, I don't know which of those if you have questions, I'll answer, or Mr. Cagle also has knowledge of what's going on as well.
Are these resolutions that we're going to consider?
Well, these are some suggested resolutions that TSBA put out. There are boards that have actually passed these and sent them on to the state, which is kind of alerting them. Knox County passed a resolution asking that the test data this year not be included in the teacher evaluation score. They felt like it was unfair. And there's other systems who have also passed that same type of resolution. At this point in the legislative process, I'm not sure how much of the impact, since they're already in session and voting on some of these, that would include. But obviously, those are the ones that TSBA had the most concern about that are listed there.
And I guess the vouchers are in these.
There is, yeah. It's the next to last one, publicly funded vouchers. Have you heard? Oh, we've had up to the date information.
As I understand it, Mr. Chairman, the voucher bill was tabled today. That's a rare parliamentary move by the House of Representatives. But there was no vote, no formal vote taken on the passage of vouchers today. The bill itself was tabled. It leads one to believe that there probably wasn't enough support there to pass it, but it does leave the bill active. It could be voted on at another time, provided it's calendared properly by the sponsor.
Okay. I tell you what we might want to do. we might want to bring these still back in March.
Okay.
And revisit the ones that are applicable,
Sure.
because the health insurance,
Right.
that's one I think we ought to look at as a board, and we want to adopt that, I think.
Well, and I've said more than once, our legislators have asked us to send them position statements so that they know how their local boards feel. And it gives them a reason to vote, and it gives them a reason to explain to us why they vote that way. So, it's important.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, we will, let's bring it back in March, and we'll revisit that.
Okay.
All right, if nothing else, we've got a March 7th is our next scheduled work session. March 14th will be our next scheduled board meeting. You mentioned earlier, there's a school committee meeting,
February the 22nd.
February 22nd.
School committee.
Any other business we need to take care of?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn, the second, all in favor, say aye.